I began to see a change in the news business a good while before I left it. And I decided to reverse engineer what it took me to deliver a story in a short amount of time and condense complex information into something that's really clear and concise, and then deliver it through the camera lens and connect to the other side of that camera with clarity and confidence. Bring that to executives at enterprise companies because, as we see time and time again, they have all the expertise, all the experience. But when the stakes are risen at a certain point, and usually it's when the stakes are the highest, their confidence disappears. And it doesn't necessarily manifest in them saying anything strange. It manifests in the symptoms like rambling, over explaining, sometimes shaky voice, sweaty palms, and you can just tell they're so nervous. So, what we do is we come in, we treat the disease of those symptoms rather than just treating the symptoms themselves. And then we share our proprietary frameworks to help them to deliver that message in a really clear and concise way.
And why do you think the symptoms appear?
Fear.
Fear.
So I call it the inner critic, a brain bully, because if you call it the inner critic, then critics can be right. And the inner critic is that voice in your head that's saying, what if I say the wrong thing and the stock price goes down? What if everybody doesn't like me? What if they realize that I shouldn't have been appointed CEO because I have no idea what I'm doing and I'm figuring out as I go? It all is rooted in fear. They wouldn't probably call it fear because executives at that level are like, I'm not fearful. But then when I dig deeper and I say, well, what is going through your mind when you step onto the stage or you go onto a media appearance? And they say, well, what if I say the wrong thing? And I was like, fear. What if people don't like me? Fear. And it usually manifests in one of four categories: fear of failure, imposter syndrome, feelings of not enough, and feelings of self doubt. And I call it the quadrant of qualms because it was so consistent over hundreds of executives that I work with that they had some version in the quadrant. And so, really, that's the root cause of their ineffective communication. It just manifests in what they say after they process that fear. And there's neuroscience behind it that we can get into. And that's what I had to dig deep to find because I needed evidence of why is fear causing these symptoms. And it's really just how our brain is wired.
And it is interesting because so I've had quite a few of the kind of high functioning CEOs on the podcast, or I work in the industry with them. I would say that most of them have insecurities, and that's why they're so successful in the first place, because they're
Sure.
so driven to
Proving
prove people wrong that they actually are insecure within themselves. And 90% of these people go into a room and they have no idea what they're doing. Like I promise you, because they've never done it before. A lot of these executive decisions that you make, you've never done it before, so you don't know what you're doing. So I suppose,
That's right.
how would you initiate the confidence boost to these people? What would be the first step?
First, we have to address what's actually happening. And I take them through a certain process to get them there. But the end goal is to say, this is what is actually going through my mind when the stakes get the highest. So you have a CEO on your podcast and he or she starts getting nervous. You can tell they're saying a lot. They're looking around, they're rambling, they can't land the plane. What's typically happening in their mind, and what we finally get to is, I'm on this podcast. Is this sounding okay? Oh gosh, I just stumbled over that word. And all of that's happening in their mind. And what neuroscience shows us is that is in the back of our mind in our reticular activating system where those thoughts live. And they move to the front of our brain where our amygdala and our prefrontal cortex are. Well, if the thoughts are fear thoughts, then the amygdala hijacks them first. And it sends all those stress hormones because it thinks you're in danger. And this is from prehistoric times when we would walk out of a cave, we'd see a saber-toothed tiger, and the amygdala would shoot stress and be like, get back in the cave. But the thing is that your amygdala doesn't know that your podcast appearance is not a saber-toothed tiger. So it reacts in the same way. It starts to get the tight chest, which then blurs the executive function in that prefrontal cortex. So Joseph Ledoux is the neuroscientist behind the psychology of this, which is that the amygdala reacts before the prefrontal cortex. So it can't make that logical decision of, listen, you're okay. Just share your message because of all those stress hormones. So what do we do about that? First of all, we uncover that that's the root cause. And then we take them through what we call the beat your brain bully method, which is externalizing it from who they are and reframing the thought. Because there's also research behind how when you reframe a thought in real time from everyone's going to hate this to I've done my work, I've prepared properly, which is something we should definitely get into because so many executives fail at this. I've prepared properly and I get to do this and I have an important message to share. And they go from scattered and nervous and tight to better stress hormones are released because the prefrontal cortex is reacting, not the amygdala. And then that tight chest doesn't happen. And then the spiral from the tight chest or the shaky hands. And I'll give you a great example of how this played out with one of my executives recently. First time I'd worked with him, his CEO, he was a chief of staff, his CEO had gone through my training and sent him to me. And I just went through the first session and I said, well, what's going on in your mind when you're presenting to the team? Because that's why they sent him, because he just would either freeze, he would start getting really shaky, he would never land the plane. And he said, I just feel like everyone's going to find out I'm not qualified for this.
Hmm.
Just like your CEOs. And these are leaders at billion-dollar companies. They're so successful. And if you're listening to this, that should make you feel like I'm not alone. Let me just say this out loud to someone that's trusted that can guide me through it and give me the answer that I've been looking for to this because everyone else has been treating the symptoms and not the disease. So we went through our process and I just emailed him last week. That's why he's fresh on my mind. And I was just like, I'm just thinking about you. How did the presentation go? And he goes, Lynn, it was like I blacked out. Everyone gave me a standing ovation. And it was the best I've ever done. And his CEO emailed me and was like, what sorcery are you doing? And I said, it's not me. It's not me. He's just finally realized what's been going on and he has something that he can do with it. So it works because it's science, like it's wiring of our brains.
There's an interesting guy. Do you watch Outlander?
No, but everybody has told me to do this. So this is my universe reminder. I'll start.
So Outlander is, yeah. I'm sure most people know what Outlander is, but it's essentially based in Scotland, or some of it's based in Scotland, and it's about people touch a rock and then get transported back in time, and it's all this kind of stuff. But there's a guy that's on Outlander called Jamie Roy. So he's in the new season. So he's a big actor, and he came into the podcast, and I was talking to him about the fact that in front of a camera or a podcast, whatever it might be, I'm fine. Like I can talk, but as soon as you put me in front of a crowd, I fall to pieces. Like I can't do it. So he was saying that whenever he gets up, does a speech at a charity or like whatever it is, he says you just need to act like you're a different person because then your defense or like they can't judge you because you're acting like someone else. And it's weird. He has like this dissociative feature in his brain where he can just go, okay, I'm now Jamie Roy actor instead of just Jamie Roy the person. And that was his kind of method of maybe carving out the anxiety. Do you think that's like a good trait or like is that something to do or no?
So first, here's a fun fact. I am exactly like you, Harrison. I used to have a massive fear of public speaking, and I would get up on stage and my voice would shake and my hands would shake. And it was so embarrassing because everyone expected me to be great at it. Because I was a news anchor, I talked to the public for a living.
Mm.
And what people don't realize is the skill set, which is this looking into a camera, even when it's millions of people, but you don't have to see their faces, is completely different than when you walk up on a stage and people, like FYI, you know this because you've been up, people have the worst stink faces when you're
Yeah.
public speaking. They're just kind of like,
flat.
and then somebody looks down at their phone and you're like, this is boring. And then somebody does this. And the thoughts that go to the front of the brain are high alert. And I really discovered what was going on because I had a massive failed keynote where I froze and it was humiliating. And it became the opening of my TEDx, which is going to be released soon. And it birthed this method because I had to figure out what was happening to me. It was so embarrassing. It kept happening. And then I brought it to my executives after it worked for me. And the method is part of what this actor is sharing, which is externalization, which we know in psychology, when we externalize our fears, we change our view on them and they no longer are associated with us. So he does that in the same way Beyonce does. So she's Sasha Fierce when she goes on stage. Kobe Bryant was Black Mamba. It's a externalization of the maybe person that is insecure that they can place in another space that doesn't have to own this space. What we do is we name that voice. So instead of becoming a different person, we give the voice a name, which allows it to be externalized and therefore no longer have control over you. So my brain bully's name is Bob because my son got a fish for Christmas and named him Bob. And I thought that was hysterical. So every time that thought would come in, that's like, people are looking at you and they're bored, or it's going to happen again. You're going to freeze again, or nobody wants to hear from you. You're some washed up news anchor, right? Like all of those are thoughts that have gone through my mind. I can say Bob, and it immediately stops the thought. And I can then reframe it in real time, which is, I've seen what I do work time and time again. It unlocks them from mind jail 100% of the time. That needs, somebody in this audience needs that today. So that's one additional strategy to becoming a different person. I also, in public speaking, try and not lock eyes with anyone whose face I don't connect to the warmth of. So I scan the room before I walk up there and I look for that person that really feels engaged. And I tend to speak to just that one person. And it doesn't mean that I don't make eye contact with others, but I, in my head, am thinking, I'm talking to you. And another technique is I find points in the room that don't involve people's faces if I feel like the room's not super warm or they aren't responding as well, so that
That's
I'm
interesting.
presenting to a chair, but they can't tell because they just think that they think I'm looking at somebody else. So there are a number of techniques, but the becoming of a different person is really just reframing in a new strategy. So it's really reframing it from I'm nervous and insecure and I have a fear of public speaking to I am this totally different person that is fearless and confident. And it's the same technique, it's just in a different strategy.
If you guys enjoyed that clip, please do me a huge favor before you go and head over to our Into the Mind podcast official page where we have the raw, uncut Into the Mind podcast, and hit that subscribe button. And the more subscribers we get, the more incredible guests we can get on the show. I really appreciate you guys for watching. Thank you so much. And I'll see you all real soon.